Hi, I'm Teresa and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a mid-year check-in and just thinking back on and reflecting on the goals that I made at the beginning of this year for my reading and seeing what progress I've made with them, if I've actually completed any of them. And there's also going to be some stats for the books that I've read so far this year and just a lot of little fun bits because I love these kind of things. I love goals and reflecting on them and working towards them and looking at statistics of what I've read. So I'm finding this very interesting. Hopefully you will too. And this video will not include things like favourite books, least favourite books, all of that, because I covered all of that in the mid-year book freakout tag, which I'll link down below, as well as actually just my original videos that I made where I talked about my goals for this year. So there's a goals one and like reflecting on 2020 and one with 15 books I wanted to read this year. So they will all be linked down below. And yes, let's just get started. So first up, I want to talk about the kind of statistic side and looking back on what I've read in terms of the numbers. So my reading goal for this year was 60 books, and in the first half of the year I have read 60 books. So I've already completed my challenge and I am so happy with this. I was not expecting it at all. I honestly don't really know what's happened the past couple of years, but I used to struggle to read 40 books in a year. Then last year I read 100, and this year I'm like on track to do that again, and I'm just like, what is happening here? I mean, what's happening is that I've discovered I actually like contemporary books, which are shorter and easier to read than the massive fantasy ones I was reading. As well as I think just booktube and having arcs and everything, like to some extent I need to read. I don't say it's like a job because that implies it's like boring or I don't want to do it or I'm getting paid, which I'm not. But you know, it is an obligation to read review copies and to read enough books to have content to make. So if you are sitting here and thinking, how on earth has she read that? Should I be reading that? No, you do not need to. I normally wouldn't. I probably wouldn't be reading this much if I didn't feel like I had to some extent. So yes, read however much you want. There's never too much or too little. Next up, I want to break down the books I read by star ratings. So this is not including rereads, but I had no 1-star reads, 2 2-star reads, 7 3-star reads, 26 4-star reads, and 12 5-star reads, and another 6 that weren't rated for whatever reason. So it's obviously been a very, very good reading year for me, lots and lots of positive ratings. So I'd count anything 3-star or above as a good book. That's my kind of 3 stars, like my good but not amazing. It's not something I'm going to really think about a lot. Whereas my 4s and my 5s are really damn good books. And yeah, I'm very happy with the quality of what I read as well, because it's one thing to read a lot of books and it's another to actually enjoy the vast majority of them. So I'm very happy with that. And if you're curious, for the 7 books that I reread this year, that was A Court of Thorns and Roses, Heartstopper Volumes 1 through 3, and the All for the Game trilogy. So it was really just going back and rereading some comfort reads, and I loved my time with all of that, and there's a few more I want to reread, hopefully sometime this summer, but I keep saying that and I've not got a lot of summer left, so we shall see. So to break down what I've read in terms of genre, I have got 3 genres picked out here as very like large, all-encompassing kind of categories. So we've got contemporary, which also includes romance and historical, just anything that's not got some otherworldly magical or sci-fi element, and then SFF, so science fiction and fantasy, and then horror and thriller. So I had 34 contemporary, 19 sci-fi and fantasy, 4 horror or thriller, and 3 just other. I think most of those others would have been just books I'd had to read for uni. So again, we can see that I have really read an awful lot of contemporary and romance and things, and I find this so interesting because up until maybe last year I was not into contemporary at all, but now it's the majority of what I read, and I think that really just shows the kind of power of having queer representation in books and being able to feel seen through that for me. And I'm sure that goes for every other kind of different identity, like in terms of race, in terms of disability. Seeing that represented can really just change how you perceive a genre. and perceive books, because suddenly it's not boring, it's something you deeply, deeply relate to. And I am just so happy with all of this and all of what I've read. I was a bit surprised by how much sci-fi and fantasy I'd read, because I didn't think I'd read much, but apparently I have, and I'm planning on hopefully reading a bit more. I'm kind of getting into a fantasy mood. I'm very excited. My current reads a fantasy and I'm enjoying that, so hopefully that mood continues. And so that's the kind of end of my breakdown of my statistics of what I've read. So now I'm going to reflect on the goals I chose. So the first one was 60 books in a year, as I've already said. I've completed that and I'm very, very happy. Next up was to read more audiobooks. I discovered audiobooks for the first time in 2020 and read a few that I really, really enjoyed. And so I wanted to continue doing that this year, and I have. I actually did a lot of my rereading via audiobook, not for Heartstopper obviously because it's a graphic novel, but the others. And this isn't the first half of the year, but recently I've been working through some older books on my TBR via audiobook and really enjoying that as well. So I've definitely picked up more, and I hope I will continue to do so, because they are just so helpful for getting through books quite quickly, to be honest, especially with me doing like my older books I'm not as interested in, but I do still want to read. These really help me get through them. And also just with rereads, when I am very familiar with the story, it helps kind of jog it along when I kind of get bored because I know what's happening. So audiobooks, amazing. The next goal I had was to read more graphic novels. So last year I also discovered graphic novels for the first time, and I really, really enjoyed them. The first one I read was Heartstopper, and then I went on to read a few others. And I enjoyed them a lot, and I wanted to read more this year, and I have, not as much as I was kind of hoping to, and I'm definitely going to try and read more further into the year. But I read Heavy Vinyl 1 and 2 and Cheer Up, as well as my Heartstopper reread, so I have read a few. And the next goal is one that I've actually failed, which was more novels in verse. So I read The Black Flamingo last year and adored it. This is a YA contemporary novel written in verse. It's absolutely gorgeous and I wanted to read more, but I haven't picked any up this year. I did have Clap When You Land on my TBR for last month, but didn't get to it, and it is in verse. So I'm definitely hoping to get to it sometime soon, as well as some more of Elizabeth Acevedo's work, because she also writes at least one other novel in verse, I believe. And I'm very excited to read some of her books. Actually, speaking of, I also had a few authors that I wanted to pick up their books, and Elizabeth Acevedo was one of them. So I have failed at that so far, but I do hope to pick up Clap When You Land sometime soon. The next author was V.E. Schwab, so I read A Darker Shade of Magic. So one book by her. I would like to read some more. I think I'm going to continue with that series at some point. And also just some of her other series really appeal to me, maybe even more so than A Darker Shade of Magic, so hopefully I'll get to them at some point. I don't know if it'll be this year, because I've got a whole lot of books I want to read, and I don't know if it'll fit in, but you never know. And then next was Rinchu Pecco, and I've still not read any of their books, and I hate it because I really want to read so many. I have The Never Tilting World, so I hope to read that one sometime soon, but they've got so many other books that I'm really interested in. I want to go right through their backlist. So I do hope to begin on that this year, though I definitely won't get all the way through it. The next author was Emily M. Danforth, the author of The Miseducation of Cameron Post and Plain Bad Heroines. I have read Plain Bad Heroines, and I actually wasn't completely a huge fan of it, and I speak about this like in my wrap-ups for that in my review, but it did put me slightly off reading Cameron Post, because the issue was that Plain Bad Heroines was very long and dense, and Cameron Post, for being a contemporary book, is also very long, and I have heard or like read reviews of people who have felt that it was, too long, too dense, too slow. And since that was a problem I had with her other book, it has put me off a bit, but I do still want to read it. And finally was Kay Ancrum. So I read The Wicker King by her, and I have not read her other two books yet. Darling just released, and I own The Way to the Start, and I'm hoping to read it maybe this month for a vlog actually. So I began my vlog series for reading hyped sapphic books this year, and I want to do a second part to it, and that is one of the books I will be reading. So very excited to hopefully pick that one up this month. My next goal was to read more Latini authors, and I have not read as many as I was hoping to, as many as I'd like. So I adored 1500 Miles from the Sun by Johnny Garcia, who is a Latini author, and Where We Go From Here by Lucas Roja, who is a Latini author as well. And actually, this book was originally written in Portuguese and, published in Brazil. And I'm actually really happy with that because I also really wanted to focus on prioritizing some authors actually living in Latin America as well as those living in the States. So yeah, I would definitely like to read some more further into this year. Elizabeth Acevedo is one who I've already said I want to pick up more from, and she also fits into this, so hopefully I will be getting through a whole bunch more. My next prompt was to read in French and Spanish because if you don't already know, I do a dual degree in both of these languages, and in September I'll be moving to France, and then February or January next year I'll be moving to Spain. So I obviously wanted to practice my language a bit, and I have not done that. Yeah, no, I cannot lie to you, I've just not. I've actually started one in the past couple of days, a cute little French middle grade, but before July, in the first 6 months of the year, I did not. So I completely failed that prompt. But you know what? I will try and make up for it. And another goal was to just continue requesting and reviewing arcs and actually improving writing my reviews. And I would say I've really definitely done that. 26 of the books I read this year were review copies. Like, that is what I was saying earlier, in that I read so much because I have to, because they're review copies, and I obviously enjoy doing them. I love it, but it is like an obligation as well as just for fun. So yes, I've definitely continued doing that, and I would say I've also improved my reviews. I'm very happy with the progress my reviews have made since I started just over a year ago, and there's some reviews I've written that I'm so beyond proud of that I think are just very good, I'm not gonna lie to you, and I'm very excited to just continue doing this. I have more review copies for the last half of the year and more reviews to write, so very excited to continue. And part of this was to also just continue hyping and supporting queer books. So again, I think it's pretty clear that I have continued doing that the first half of this year and will continue to. It brings me so much joy, honestly, especially when I'll get comments or messages from people saying, like, thank you, I hadn't found sapphic books before, but I've now got a few ordered because of you or whatever, and I'm just like, I love that so much, and I'm so happy to be able to do that and to like provide that service, I suppose. So yeah, very, very happy that I've continued doing that. And my final goal was my kind of main goal, which is to clear out my old owned TBR. So this was books that I had bought before 2020 that I wasn't that keen on anymore, but still wanted to give a chance at least. This was like a main goal of mine in 2020, and I got it way, way, way down to 16 at the start of this year, and I only read 2 though in the first 6 months, so it's now at 14. Though I have read another since then. I'm currently reading one, so I'm going to make progress in the second half of the year. And my next and kind of final wee section, I wanted to talk about the books that I'd said I would read this year. I picked out 15. I have read 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Well, 4.5, I think we'll say, because one of them that I picked out was a series, and I've read the second book, but not the third. So I had said that I would read from my old TBR, Darker Shade of Magic, King of Scars, and Starless Sea. I've read the first 2. And from books that I already own, The Miseducation of Cameron Post, Loveless, We Set the Dark on Fire, The Wicker King, and The Never Tilting World, of which I've only read The Wicker King. And books I didn't own or still don't own but I wanted to read, there's An Ember in the Ashes, The Henna Wars, These Violent Delights, and The Poppy War. I've only read The Henna Wars. And series I wanted to continue are the Girls of Paper and Fire series, the second 2 books, the third one releasing later this year. I have been putting this off until closer to the release of the third one so I can just reread the first and have it fresh in my head before I begin the second and the third. then also continue the King Chronicles. I read the first book last year and didn't continue, and so I'm going to need to do that. And then the third was the Illuminae Files series. I read the first one last year, read the second one so far this year, but not yet the third one. So yes, that is my kind of mid-year check-in, reflection on my goals. I would say that it's not going too badly. There's places where it could be better, but it's not the worst. And it's not like I just set all of these goals, immediately forgot about them and did nothing, which is always good to know, though I definitely did most of my progress in January, and I have kind of let it slide, but we're back on track now, and I'm hoping I can get through these. With my older books, my TBR, I had actually said, I think at least to myself, I can't remember if I put it in the video, that if I didn't read them before I went abroad, I would just unhaul them because clearly I'm not that interested. And considering the progress I've made, I'm kind of wanting to go back on that a little bit because I just hadn't had time to read any of them because I'd been always reading review copies, or at uni where I just didn't have time to read. So I'm going back on that a little bit, and I will give them to the like month I'm home in between France and Spain. We'll see how they do then. But also I'm like, there's so many other books I want to read more, so maybe it's not even worth it. I don't know, it just depends what mood I'm in. Sometimes I want to read them, other times I just can't be bothered. So yes, that was a fun little ramble. This whole video's been a ramble. I'm so sorry. It's probably a mess, but I hope you've enjoyed. You find some of these statistics interesting. Hope you've also had a good start to your reading year, and yeah. I will have links to the videos I mentioned down below, as well as my social media, bookshop affiliate, wishlist, everything you could ever need. And yes, thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you with another video soon.